So just a couple of months ago, I picked up a used gimbal off of a local classified ad site in my area. And what I wanted to do today is show you some of the results that you can get with a gimbal, walking versus handheld, and talk about why these are so useful and how to get ones affordably. So the specific gimbal that I bought, this is the Gimbal Crane V2, and it's, a little outdated. It's been surpassed by newer models and is certainly not the flashiest gimbal out there in terms of weight limit or features, but it still does the job really well. I would put my camera on it, but I am shooting on my camera right now for this video. But if I kind of mock it up with my hand here, you can see this is in run-of-the-mill 3-axis DSLR mirrorless gimbal, and it works really well. I did do some testing with it before I bought it, obviously, but the batteries seem to be holding up, the controls, the motors, everything was included. I still have the case, because that came with it, even though it was used, and it's been working out quite well for me so far. So I want to show some of the results I've gotten through my pretty preliminary testing. And I also want to talk about some projects I'm going to be using this for in the future and how you can get a gimbal for yourself on the cheap. So enough chat, let's talk about results. So on screen right now are videos I took in a local trail near my house just to do some preliminary testing. You may have seen things like this before, but I just wanted to show it here for this particular model of gimbal. So on screen, you're seeing how it looks like when I'm walking handheld with the camera versus with the gimbal, and then running with the camera versus running with the camera on the gimbal. Then you can also see trying to get low shots is really difficult without an apparatus like this gimbal. So it's really shaky in most cases when it's not on the gimbal. And this leads to huge improvements in production quality, the cinematography, how good the image looks, and the blur of everything else in focus and not in focus. So this particular gimbal right here was listed for about $250 on my local classified ad site, Kijiji. Now, I did have to factor in taxes because it was actually from a store instead of an individual person. But overall, it was still really cheap, coming to about $282 for the whole package, including the carrying case I just mentioned and all of the original accessories. The store had done some testing beforehand to make sure everything was working. I also did some testing before I handed them my money, and it's been working out really well so far. And I have been using this secretly to film an upcoming documentary project that I've been working on for a really long time now. This has been kind of on the back burner for almost a year at this point. I've been working on this slowly and surely. It's a very personal project to me. No timeline for when it's going to be completed, unfortunately, but it will be coming out sometime in 2021, probably to this YouTube channel. We'll see. And I was shooting a lot outdoors in the preliminary stage, and I was watching back some of the B-roll footage. I'm like, this is not doing it for me. And I really want the cinematography in this documentary to really exceed anything else I've done before. That's part of the reason I bought a drone last year. That's why I've been investing in some better camera and lighting equipment, microphones. So I figured a gimbal was the next best way to improve the look of my footage I was getting for this documentary project. And you saw the example footage I was just putting up earlier in this video. So I'm really excited to keep using this gimbal for that and other projects in the future. And definitely be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of these projects when they do eventually come out. So now let's talk cost. How can you get your own cheap gimbal? Well, it's definitely worth doing a lot of research beforehand. You gotta know what the dimensions and weight of the camera you're using are. You have to know how heavy the lenses are. How will gimbals interact with the camera? Is there any software features, or is it just purely mechanical? Are you loyal to a certain brand? Is the weight limit compatible? So you have to do a lot of research. And there are a number of notable and really solid gimbal brands out there. DJI with the Ronin series, that's more higher end, but definitely a really good premium option. On the lower end, you've got players like Gimbal, as I mentioned. Feiyu Tech has some really good gimbals, and you really just have to look around and do research. I know it's boring, I know it's tedious, but it is important before you start shopping. So what I would likely do is create a short list of gimbals that you're interested in looking at and then go online. Local classified sites, Facebook Marketplace if you think it'll work, eBay is definitely a good place to check out, and Amazon has some really rather good prices on new gimbals, not used ones, if you are interested in that. Now, if you are looking for a used gimbal, I would just go talk to someone in person. I know it's very hard because of COVID. I live in the GTA. We just moved into the red zone, so that might be tricky. But if you know someone personally who has a gimbal, who you might want to buy it from, that's a really good way to go. Because the thing about gimbals is that their prices do depreciate. Like, you know, the newer models come out, the old ones get less expensive. But there's not really anything about a gimbal that makes it worthless, right? Like, all you've got here are a bunch of motors. They still work. The batteries, they're fine. The controls, I mean, they're just a bunch of buttons. So really, the main thing that's being upgraded is those software features and the weight capacity. So if you can get away with kind of the skimpy or older models, then that's definitely a solid way to go if you can get away with it for your particular camera system. So after seeing the results and sharing my thoughts, I hope you do realize how incredibly useful really gimbals can be to even just the average filmmaker and cinematographer. I found that the gimbal here can replace my camera slider. It's replaced a bunch of other gear that I've decided to sell now because it's easy to set up and use. It's no fuss whatsoever. Once you have it balanced, you're ready to go. The battery life is excellent. And I really do like this particular gimbal, and I'm sure if you do some searching, you can find one as well. Definitely be sure to subscribe for an upcoming full review of the Zhiyun Crane V2. I know it's not the newest model, but I do want to put a review out there for those of you who are interested. And also, follow me on Twitter at KyleGnu for updates in between my weekly uploads.